Welcome back to another video by me, Debron. Today we are going to be building the Bandai 172 scale Y-Wing Starfighter. First released in 2017, this is a movie accurate representation of the Y-Wing featured in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It assisted with the bombing and destruction of the Death Star. Let's find out if this model is enjoyable to build. I think using the Tamiya panel line accent color on this specific kit was an excellent choice. With all the panel lines and the extremely detailed parts, the thinners just fill it so nicely and it just gives it such a weathered look. We'll probably come back later on with some of the Citadel color shades and just give it a little bit of a touch up in some areas, but right now I am extremely happy with how it's turned out. It is extremely satisfying to watch the panel liner do its thing. It just flows so nicely into all the lines and it just makes all the small details that are a little bit harder to see just pop. So just chiming in with a little bit of history of the Y-Wing, and this is directly from the front of the instruction manual. The Y-Wing is a workhorse starfighter, has been in use since the Clone Wars, used for dogfights and for bombing runs against capital ships and ground targets. Y-Wings are often overshadowed by newer models such as the X-Wing and the A-Wing, but the Y-Wing's historical importance is remarkable. It has reliably served multiple generations of starfighters. And just from one of the Star Wars fandoms that I will frequently look at, I love the lore of Star Wars. Designed after the success of the BTLB, the BTL A4 Y-Wing Assault Starfighter Bomber variant served as a single-seat tactical strike spacecraft which lacked the gunner's position of other variants. After the Empire phased out the BTL, this variant was extensively utilised by the Alliance to restore the Republic and New Republic during the Galactic Civil War. Its durability, dependability, and heavy armament made it a staple in the Rebel fleet, seeing action at major battles such as Scarif, Yavin, Endor, and Jakku. one of the most exhausting aspects of putting this kit together were the fluid supply lines. At least that's what I'm guessing that they are. Once they are put in place, they add so much detail to an already detailed packed kit. As good as they look, the pure frustration of lining them up with barely non-existent holes is a nightmare. The parts are fragile, handling them is finicky as the parts are so small. I even struggled using the godhand nippers to cut them off the runners. I almost gave up on this kit entirely, the filming, editing, and posting, but I pushed on through. The pipes are so fragile to handle that I ended up breaking 3 or 4 of them and had to use the Mr. Cement to put them back together. I ended up enlarging some of the holes they were inserted into, and there are so many left over on the runners. So it begs the question, did Bandai know this would frustrate a lot of builders so they added more, or was it purely to fill up space on the runners? The canopy comes in a clear variation and a windowless teal variation. I ended up going with the clear canopy, which I did end up painting in a slightly off teal colour. The clear canopy is an open version. I'm unsure if it's meant to close, however, with a little bit of force it can close. I'm just hoping it doesn't damage the plastic, but I guess time will tell. kit comes with an R2 unit or an R5 unit that is nestled just behind the cockpit. It's similar to how an astromech sits in the X-Wings and a fair few other ships in the Star Wars universe. The kit also comes with 2 standing 2D figures and 2 variations of a pilot and bomber that sit in the cockpit. I am unsure if both of the sitting figures can be placed in there. I haven't actually tried. I'm still yet to decide on some colors for the human units. I'm guessing I'll just do the traditional colors that they appear in the movies. I decided on the metallic silver and red display markers to paint the little astromech droid that sits behind the cockpit. Building the two engines for the Y-Wing were definitely a highlight of the kit. It's such an interesting design, using four little pylons that hold the engines on. I get it's a space vehicle, and it definitely feels like a space vehicle compared to some of the other Star Wars kits, and it just looks really good when they're built. They're sturdy, and the joints that hold the two pieces together are surprisingly strong, even though they feel very fragile when you take them off the runners. thought I'd try something new with reviewing kits on the channel, and that is a few things that I enjoyed about the kit and a few things that I disliked about the kit. I kept having the thought of how negative I was going to be while building the Y-Wing, owing to the absolute nightmare of installing the supply lines over practically the entire kit. Once I was through that, several hours of torture is where the real fun begins. So, 3 things that I really enjoy about the kit. First up would have to be the detailing in the overall model. Bandai knocked it out of the park with this one, as with the majority of the ships that they've recreated. Notably the Millennium Falcon, TIE Bomber, and the AT-AT kits. The detail in the molds is impeccable. Second would be the overall design. I've never been that much of a fan of the Y-Wing in the movies, nor really the X-Wing for that matter. But since building this, what I thought was going to be a hand grenade, I've since developed a fond appreciation for it. And thirdly would have to be the accessories it comes with. The different style canopies, astromech droids, and the Death Star display stand make it vastly different to other ships from Bandai. There's a few other kits that come with the Death Star display stand, so you can attach them all together, which I really like. One of the main reasons I started to really dislike the build would have to be an easy one. The supply lines that are scattered over the entirety of the Y-Wing, not only are they a pain to place, but cutting them off the runners without breaking them is another hurdle that I had to go through. It can be a very time-consuming aspect of the build, and having to enlarge holes for the piping to fit snugly into was also a bit of a downside. Overall, however, I think Bandai knocked this one out of the park. With its immense detailing and basic color scheme, it can really be made into something great. And maybe down the line I'll do a lighting kit conversion for the cockpit, astromech droid, and the 2 engines, similar to what I've done with C-3PO's eyes. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're liking the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and maybe even comment. I'm always up for a chat and would love to know what you're building or what you guys would like me to build next. Cheers.